So hello again, my name is Kamil Gungol. I am the Policy and Movement Support Officer at ENIL, the European Network on Independent Living. And yeah, I am supporting also the Independent Living Research Network. And today we have a webinar of the Independent Living Research Network about independent living research and co-production. And I think this is a very interesting topic, and it was reflected also to the number of people interested in the webinar and registered. It's quite big, and we are very happy about it. We were chatting with Theo a few days ago, and we were saying that usually academic spaces and meetings online usually don't gather very big numbers. This one seems to be the exception, hopefully. It's still early, so people will join slowly, but it's already quite a nice number of people. We have more than 100 people registered, so we're very happy. Before we start, let me very briefly share some housekeeping rules. Also, if I speak too fast, just let me know. I tend to do that, so I will try to slow down a bit. So today we have automatic captioning, which you can activate if you click on the bottom of your Zoom application. There is a choice show captions, and if you click on that, it should work. And then you have a few other options like you can raise your hand later and some other stuff. You can open the chat and all these things. So we have captioning. We will record the session and we will upload it later on YouTube for anyone else that would like to watch and learn from these very interesting discussions. If you don't wish to be visible, just turn off your camera. Otherwise, I think you will be visible at some point in the recording. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat anytime during the session, or after every speaker, there will be a Q&A session. In that case, you can also raise your hand and speak verbally. There will be a few minutes for that as well. But I mean, in the chat, feel free to use it anytime and to start discussions and debates. And of course, we will also try to monitor together with my colleagues, Christos and others, about, any technical issues or any problems. Feel free to reach out to us. You can do it via the chat or via you can email us if it's easier. If something doesn't work, we will try to make sure everything works properly. There will be a small break in the middle of the session, so there will be time for everyone to rest and to take a tea, coffee, whatever everyone needs. So this is the practical information. Before I give the floor to the protagonists of our webinar today, just let me share with you that a few thoughts. That it's really nice to see so many people interested in the independent living research, and it shows to us that people and our members and everyone understand the connection of independent living and research, and that the latter, the research, is not disconnected from the movement, and it's not irrelevant, because some people say, but researchers, academia, they are, in the universities, in the labs, good, but what it has to do with the movement, we see that it has to do with the movement. There is a lot of connection, and we will listen today about it. We will hear about it. And also during the Freedom Drive, we have another session I will tell you later. So it's even more connection. And as we always say also at ENIL, our work is research-based. And everything we demand and ask for and all the advocacy we do is evidence-based. So thanks to the researchers and the people, with the experience they had, and of course the activists too, all this base our work. That's why we established also the Independent Living Research Network, which is led by Theodor Mladenov. And I will give him the floor now for a few words to tell us about the network and anything else Theo you want to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camille. And I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm also very happy to have our three speakers today, Magda Diomorat and Radoš, and also to see so many people in the audience. My name is Theodor Mladenov. I'm a sociologist and senior lecturer at the University of Dundee, and I coordinate the Independent Living Research Network, this wonderful research collaboration.
Yes, you are muted.
We cannot hear you. Yeah.
Now it's unmuted. Yeah. Sorry, we lost you for a second. Now it's okay.
Yeah, it's not me. It's the technology.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I was saying that the Independent Living Research Network, which is a research collaboration hosted by the European Network on Independent Living, was founded in 2017, so almost 10 years ago, on the initiative of Jamie Bolling, and she, her usual visionary thinking, thought at that time that it would be good to have this research network at ENO. And since then, the network has been steadily growing. I must say, the idea of the network, as Camille also mentioned, is to have this connection, this bridge between academia and disabled people's organizations that advocate for independent living. One of the issues in academia is that one of the issues in university research is that independent living tends to be dominated, independent living research tends to be dominated by the perspectives of service providers and care professionals. But as most of you know, the European Network on Independent Living has always emphasized the perspective and expertise of people who use services, disabled people who use services. Therefore, we at the Independent Living Research Network encourage researchers to build on the work of independent living activists to use this work as a ground on which to build their research, our research. And this helps develop what I have recently started to call independent living studies, which is, I think, starting to emerge in academia. On the other hand, there is this influence in the other direction as well, enhancing the presence of user-led research on independent living in the universities, in academia, strengthens the advocacy for independent living, not only in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. So this can be a mutually beneficial project. Currently, we have 59 researchers as members of the Independent Living Research Network from 24 countries, mostly in Europe, but also we have members from other parts of the world, including China, Uganda, Uzbekistan, and Colombia. The membership is open for researchers who work on independent living and related topics and share the values of the European Network on Independent Living. Choice, control, self-determination, user-led initiatives, and user-led services. Key areas of expertise of our members include the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Independent Living movement and philosophy. Deinstitutionalization is a strong thematic focus, and personal assistance, although our members have expertise in many other areas as well, like intersectionality, decolonial studies, and we'll focus today particularly on co-production, which is another key thematic area. People can become members by completing a brief online questionnaire, and I will paste the link in the chat when I finish. We maintain a dedicated page on INO's website with research profiles and latest publications of our members. We also maintain a reading list on independent living research that is also made available on INO's website. And we organize webinars like this, and we present at conferences. We presented, for example, at the conference of the Nordic Network on Disability Research in 2023, and in 2025, we organized the thematic stream on independent living. We are organizing a thematic stream on independent living for the next conference of the Nordic Network of Disability Research, which will be in May 2027, and the call for abstracts will soon be open, so keep an eye on this as well. So this is what I wanted to say about the Independent Living Research Network, and now I pass the floor to Magdalena Kuczejko from the Warsaw School of Economics in Poland, and we are keen to hear about her co-productive research with disabled people's organizations.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. First of all, thank you very much, Theo and Kamil, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and to be able to present the research we are currently conducting at SGH Warsaw School of Economics together with Polish Disability Forum. My presentation is called When Research Meets Activism, Co-Producing Independent Living Research on Supported Housing in Poland. I will start with introducing myself because I think this is important in the context of the presentation and in the context of my position in this between academia and independent living disability rights movement in Poland. So I considered myself an academic activist or activist turned researcher. I entered academia later in life. I was over 40 already. I have worked with DPOs and governments in the issue on disability policy for over 2 decades outside academia. Now I'm an assistant professor at the Department of Social Policy at SGH, Warsaw School of Economics, with a PhD in public policy, but I'm also a sociologist and social psychologist. But my involvement in the independent living and disability rights movement in Poland and beyond stayed very strong. I'm still deeply involved in the CRPD implementation with the focus on Article 19 and Article 6. So even though I'm right now based in academia, I still half of my time spending on the cooperation with many different organizations. And even today I'm at this conference on the Ombudsman Office of 20 years of CRPD. So I'm in a Museum of Modern Art in Poland right now, because after the webinar, I will be joining them. So the project I want to tell you about today, it's called Tenant or Care Recipient: Analysis of the Determinants of the Development of Supported Housing in Poland as an implementation on the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And the research is carried out by SGH together with the Polish Forum of Persons with Disabilities, and it's funded by the State Fund for the Rehabilitation of Disabled People. I think this is something that I really want to point out, like the three actors here in this project, that we have an SGH, which is a leading economic school in Poland. We have Polish Disability Forum, which is an umbrella organization for people with disabilities in Poland, with a strong focus on advocacy, mostly on Article 19 and Article 12. And the whole research is funded by Polish State Fund for the Rehabilitation of Disabled People, which is like the main governmental agency for funding service provision for people with disability, and sometimes also research. So the aim of the research is to examine whether supported housing in Poland is developed in line with Article 19 of CRPD, and to identify legal, strategic, and local conditions that support or hinder this process. We have three main stages of the research. It's not a very big research. It's a one-year project, like not very large. But what we did legal analysis, we did strategic and policy analysis, and we did field research at the local level. We did 5 study visits in different parts of Poland to see how the supported housing, independent living arrangements looks like in different places. And we did around 25 interviews with very different actors of the process. The center of the whole process was to do interviews with people with disabilities who are actually living in these places. But we also talked with the staff and with the local government's representatives. So in what ways is this research a co-production? When Theo invited me to this webinar, my first thought was that I've never thought about this research as a co-production. It's because it was something that we just decided to do together. And by we, I mean team of people who are working together for many, many years now in different organizations, different circumstances, and on different projects. So the word co-production didn't even cross my mind. But of course, this research is a co-production. It was jointly developed by the SGH, Polish Disability Forum. It brought together researchers with and without disabilities, working in a partnership rather than with any kind of hierarchy. And what is also important, that the original idea came from Polish Disability Forum, while SGH acted as the possibility of getting the money better. It was easier for us to get the money basically. So of course the research process was shared, including joint fieldwork, and all the interviews were conducted in a pair of researchers with and without disabilities, mostly me and my colleague Krzysztof, the president of Polish Disability Forum. You can see us in the picture together. There is a picture of us together with the directors of some daycare centers in one of the municipalities in Poland. We were standing and smiling. This was after the interviews. And of course, co-production goes beyond the data collection to the interpretation of findings, as well as development of the conclusion and recommendations, which is the stage we are at right now. Motivation for doing this research was not purely academic, and I think it's important. It was also designed as a tool that can be used for advocacy, for better legislation on supported housing for persons with disabilities, but also it's to give like another tool to changing the narrative around housing with support for persons with disabilities by using independent living as the main analytical lens. It's important because we have this huge debate about the DI process in Poland, and the whole debate is focusing on transforming the institutions themselves, and not that there is no person-centered approach, and the independent living is there, but in a very superficial way. So this was also the way of changing the narrative. This was the idea. And we also want to see how this supported housing really looks like, because this is something that it's quite new in Poland, and it's still like underdeveloped, and still this is seen more like a something, not like a mainstream solution, but something like innovation. So now I want to tell you a bit about experiencing the research process, because even though I did like hundreds of research in my life, because before I entered academia, I was independent expert on evaluation in disability policy. But this research was different, and I tell you why. The fact that interviews were conducted in a pair of researchers, one with and one without disability, was crucial to this research process, was central. What we experienced during interviews is something I called like the shifting power relations, that I feel that sometimes during the interview, it was, for me, some of the question I know that it shouldn't be me who is asking this question. And for Krzysztof, asking this question was natural, and people were happy to answer his questions. For example, the question about could you leave your house after in the evening, or is there any can you drink alcohol in your home? I felt that this is not the kind of question I could ask, and for him, it was people were happy when he was asking this question, and they answered him very honestly. These questions were quite sensitive, and he was just yeah. So for him, it was easier to ask this question. But sometimes it was also the other perspective, especially for the local government representatives. My academic position make it possible to ask like different kind of questions, I guess. So we changed this, like the power shift, it was changing constantly during the interviews. It also worth to mention that Krzysztof, I think it's considered like an icon on independent living in Poland, as he is the president of Polish Disability Forum, and also he has a PhD in law. And in one of the interviews, the woman.
I think we lost Magdalena.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It seems so.
Yes. Yes, she left the meeting.
Okay, so she's I think in some museum, because they have a big event on the CLPD anniversary. She's back.
I don't know what happens, but I hope you can hear me now, and I will go back.
Welcome,
Yeah,
welcome back.
yeah. Okay. I'll go back and okay. So yeah, just Can you see this presentation? Yeah.
Yes,
And can
all
you hear
good,
me?
all good.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to say that Krzysztof is an icon on independent living in Poland. And there was even this one of this interview when the staff member said that, oh, there is this one person with very significant speech impairment with Krzysztof has. And he's living with his wife and he has a PhD. And Krzysztof was like, oh, it's me. You are talking about me. Yeah, but what was also very important for me, very important experience for me in this research is that the ableism and paternalism I faced and I see during the research process. For some of the people we were interviewing, especially for the local government representatives, he was like invisible. I need to do a speaking for him. So people were just talking with me. Some of these people act like he's not there. Sometimes I feel that they insulted him during the interview. There was this one case when woman started to sharing with us her experience that her brother has the same disability, so she understands this issue very well, and that she doesn't need a speaking, and then it turns out she doesn't even understand the question. So it was always a challenge for both of us to maintain the research neutrality, especially in the situation of tension. I also faced my own ableism attitudes during the research, even though I was sure that maybe at this point I do not have them. But sometimes I feel that maybe this is the moment when Krzysztof should not be like asking more questions. He should just stop, just like make everyone comfortable during the interviews. But then I was angry at myself because he was the one that was insulted during the interviews, or he has to hear these things about himself or people with disabilities, like these very paternalistic attitudes. Accessibility was, of course, a crucial part of the process because we interview a lot of people with disabilities, also with intellectual disabilities, which also raised important ethical challenges. Fieldwork involved travel, which means that my role sometimes switched from being a researcher to being a personal assistant, and I was also doing the speaking, doing the interviews. So it was also something that I think I don't. It's of course I can talk about it a lot, what it did to the whole process, but it was there. So this was like kind of additional work I have to be doing. But it also involved for me, for the first time, experiencing the reverse situation when I myself needed an accessibility, needed the support because we were doing an interview with another person with a speech impairment, and I couldn't understand this person, and Krzysztof was doing the speaking for me. So this was also interesting and get me a lot of reflection about the whole process. This research was designed from the beginning as an advocacy tool. So just give you very brief context. I know that I'm running out of time, so I would just tell you that in Poland we still have a lot of people living in residential care, but the system rely heavily on informal care. At the same time, people do not really believe that the state can provide a reliable support system. And we have ongoing debate about the DI process and about the reform of this whole social policy. So we saw this. We've seen from the beginning the research report as an advocacy tool. And the partnership mattered here, like in a very strategical way, because SGH is a leading economic university. So when there is an SGH logo on the report, it will be seen more like an expert report than as something that comes from the NGO. but also it makes we need to discuss what we really want to, how do we understand things, what do we mean by that something is in line with CAPD, how do we, if the research findings are in line with what we thought initially, so this was also a very interesting process, and we are at this moment right now. And I will finish with tell you a bit about how it was for me to do co-production about independent living in academia. So of course there is this difference between the organizational cultures of academia and NGO. This was for me in academia first project in co-production, so it was a challenge. And at the same time, I think, and this is something absolutely brilliant for me, that the project was also about claiming the space in academia, that we can do such a research, that research on independent living, which even in whole disability studies, sometimes it's seen as something radical, that we can do it at an economic school. So this was actually quite really amazing. And also the partnership made it possible to do more joint activities, and we ended up signing an official agreement between SGH and Polish Disability Forum, which will help us in the future, and also it helped us with somehow convinced our administration that we need to pay greater attention to accessibility of the events. So this process was also about institutional learning, I guess. And at the end, I will just show you a few pictures. In the first picture, there is two men. One is Krzysztof Kurowski, president of Polish Disability Forum, and the other one is a rector, and they are signing an official agreement of cooperation. On the second picture, you can see a conference room, and there is a lot of people, and there is live captioning. There's also a sign language interpretation, but you cannot see that on the picture. It was a big conference about accessibility. And here at this slide, we have three pictures and from the conference that we did 2 weeks ago. And at this conference, I presented the initial results of this research, and the conference was translated into 3 languages: Polish, English, and Ukrainian, because it was also about the recovery of Ukraine and disability rights. And it was with sign language interpretation for 2 languages, Polish and Ukrainian. So on the first picture, you can see 2 sign language interpreters on the screen. And on the second picture, you can see the people who I invited to join the panel. I was chairing after I presented the research result. And there are 4 people, and one is on a wheelchair, and the person on a wheelchair also has it was Mr. Marek. He also has intellectual disability. And I think it was the first time that person with intellectual disability was a panelist at our school. And it was really a long process to prepare him for this, and also for me to prepare myself for his participation in this panel to be really meaningful and not form of tokenism. And at the last picture, you can see the conference room full of people at this conference. And my last slide is the question, what's next? So from the research perspective, of course, we use both the report and the work around it as a tools for advocacy for the right to independent living, but also we will publish academic articles based on the study findings, obviously. But at the same time, this research is a part of something that we are planning to do in the future, that we want to establish the Center for Research on Disability Policy. at SGH with the focus on independent living. But as we are an economics school, we can also do a public policy analysis and economic cost calculation. This is something we want to do in the next 2 or 3 years. We will see. But right now we are like claiming the space to make it more possible. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Magda. It was super interesting, and to see also, how you try to co-produce with the disabled community and also what you said in the end about also bringing the Ukrainian perspective, which is like shaping now the reality in the area. And maybe, I don't know if there's any questions from people, but one that I had was actually exactly about that was it equally easy for people from Ukraine to join the whole research co-production process, or do they have different barriers and it was more difficult? And then I see Deborah is coming to questions.
Oh, hi, Debbie. I will answer your question. So in the research, we do not have Ukrainian perspective, as we were focusing on 5 municipalities in Poland. But the conference we were doing 2 weeks ago, it was a bit about combining different fundings that we did a panel about this research, but we include Ukrainian perspective that we invited a speaker from small NGO from Lviv, and then she was sharing her experience with developing with the DI process in the process of Ukrainian recovery, planning Ukrainian recovery. And also she was telling us how it looks like in Ukraine, that the DI process is even though there is a war, there are some attempts to do DI anyway and not to rebuild institutions in the future. So I think it was important to involve her, but it was also a bit challenging to have a person with intellectual disability and a person from Ukraine in one panel at the same time. And there was also the people from there's a local government representative in the panel, and also a person from Polish Association for Intellectual Disabilities. So it was really mixed, and it was a bit challenging.
Yes, I can understand that, and thank you. I assume that the housing discussion, especially for people coming from war areas, it's very important and a very hot topic. But let's go to Deborah.
Hi, Magda. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for sharing your insights from your very interesting topic. I've got a couple of questions. You said, or you mentioned that when you were doing the field work with, I'm not sure, you said the lived experience researcher was an academic, didn't you? Like from an academic institution? No.
No, he has a PhD, but he's not working in academia.
He's not affiliated with academia at the moment.
No.
Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, because of his disability, it was impossible.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, yeah.
And then you mentioned that the power dynamics constantly shifted when you as a pair or tandem interviewed the person with disability. So I was wondering, how did you navigate the dynamics so that the power got back or came back to the respondent, the interviewee? That's one question. And the other question is like your reflections now on the presentation on your positionality. What was the framework or the structure for those reflections? I mean, are they just your reflections, or did they come from debriefs with the lived experience researcher? And what are the theoretical underpinnings of those critical reflections?
So there is no framework for now for this reflection.
Mm-hmm.
After each visit, because we need to travel to do the interviews. So we talk a lot about it. There was always this duo, the pair, me and Krzysztof. So we just basically, after the interviews, we were reflecting on that, like what happened during the interviews, I think this is also something I said at the beginning, that it was hard for me to think about this research as a co-production, because I was thinking that this is just like another thing that we are doing together. So we are basically friends. So we just, after the interviews, we just discussed what just happened on some meta level, and also we discussed this power shifts, that it was. I mean, sometimes it was like, oh my God, it was horrible. Why this woman asked you that? Or sometimes it was like, oh, it was so great that you asked this question. And he said, oh, I was looking at you, and I was wondering if you stay silent or will you say something? Yeah. So it was just like, we talk a lot about it, reflect a lot about it after the interviews, but without any framework for now.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to analyze that data coming from the reflections on those issues you raised, because I think there's a gap in your method or in your approach within the inclusive participatory research paradigm, that area. So would be interesting to talk to you more about it when we see each other.
Yeah. We will.
Cool. Is there any other question? I don't see anything in the chat, but don't be shy if there is any question. Raise your hand or feel free to type. If not, we can move, I guess, to the next speaker. And you can still type your question in the chat for as long Magda can stay with us and answer.
At least for 1 hour. So yeah.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I don't see any question coming. That's fine. We move forward, and we may come back if needed. So we now travel to Japan, I think, where Dilmurad Yusupov is at the moment. But he's from Uzbekistan, and he will share with us his research about using participatory video in a cooperative inquiry and advocacy with disabled people. And there was anyone speaking, or it was my no, my bad. Okay, so Dilmurad, yeah, feel free to take the floor and also introduce a bit better yourself. You know better than me what is good to say.
Hi, colleagues. I wanted to share my slides, but I cannot. So can you maybe give me the sharing function?
I'm sorry, I think, yeah, now you should be able to do that.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, my bad.
No, it's fine. Thank you. I can share now. Can you see my screen?
Yes. You need to, yes, now we see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, thanks so much, Camille and Theodore and other colleagues for organizing this webinar and inviting me. Uzbekistan is usually not part of Europe, but we frame it more as a Central Asia. But I think it's a really good opportunity also to look also on the similarities we have in terms of context, because Uzbekistan is also a post-Soviet country, like some Eastern European countries. And I originally come from Uzbekistan, but I'm currently based in Tokyo at the University of Tokyo. I'm doing my postdoctoral fellowship here. And today I'll be talking more about cooperative inquiry I did with a group of disabled people, mainly with physical impairments in Tashkent, as part of my PhD thesis. Let me talk a bit about myself. As Magda was saying, that it's difficult to imagine like independent living research within an economics faculty. I also had the same kind of issue with my academic career. I'm a trained economist, but I have never thought about disability studies or anything like that until I started my PhD, actually. So when I finished my MA in economics, I did development economics, and we didn't touch much about the disability studies. And when I started working for the Japan International Cooperation Agency, we had a project on supporting disabled people in Uzbekistan. I served as a project assistant. There was a paradigm shift from a very kind of positivist understanding of the world to social constructivist and maybe activist. As Magda was explaining about herself, an activist turned into researcher. I would say maybe the same, because I started working mainly in a development sector, and then we co-founded an NGO in Tashkent in 2016. It was very difficult to register an NGO in Uzbekistan due to some political reasons. Anything like non-government is very suspicious. So we struggled for 2 years to register this organization, and I'm a co-founder together with Mohabbat. You can see her in the middle, is using a wheelchair and hijab, and she is still working with me, and I'm still related to the NGO, although I'm trying to do more kind of research stuff. But since January 2017, I've been leading multiple projects on disability inclusion. And you can also check out our website here. And this is a picture of our office in Tashkent, the entrance to the office. To shed light a bit about Uzbekistan, because it's not talked a bit more about. So we don't talk much about Uzbekistan in disability studies, and there is a huge gap, I think. We were part of the Soviet Union, and we gained our independence on 1st September 1991. And we had a very authoritarian leadership until 2016. And my fieldwork, my PhD thesis, coincided with this a period of change when the new president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, came into power. And my fieldwork was into 2018 and 2019. We have a population of 38 million people, I think similar to Poland. But interestingly, we have only 1 million registered disabled people. Unlike Magda was saying that there are 3 million, almost 3 million people, more than 3 million people in Poland with a registered disability certificate. And we are majority Muslim. And one thing I explain, which would be needed for my presentation, is we have a very specific Uzbek community structures called mahalla. These are popular in Central Asia, and we call it as a neighborhood, self-governing body, which is led by a chairperson, and there's a kind of a local decision-making body. My thesis was about disability and citizenship in post-Soviet Uzbekistan, and I tried to explore the role of disabled people's organizations in how disabled people advocate for their citizenship, and also explore the role of mahalla and the emerging role of Islam in conceptualizing disability and how disabled people are using daily Islamic practices to reframe disability discourses in the society. And I used a multiple of research methodologies, and today I will be talking more about the cooperative inquiry. So in 2018, I did a qualitative, more kind of explorative inquiry where I used, similarly to what Magda was saying, that I used the co-researchers from our DPO Sharai Plus. And these were mainly women, and I used them as interviewers in my first phase of the qualitative inquiry. And first, we had a workshop on how to do research, what are ethics in research, and how to gain informed consent and what are the research questions, which changed dramatically from what I had in the beginning and then after. And then I did more of critical ethnography, where in specific locations within Tashkent. And finally, I did a participatory video. So I tried multiple methodologies, and it was very bit hectic, but I'm still analyzing the data I received from that fieldwork. If I explain on the map, you can see the different research sites. So because of the Soviet legacies, we have specific segregated zones within the city, which are called Town of the Deaf, or they also called Mahalla of the Deaf, and Town of the Blind, with a majority of disabled populations, because there was the Society of the Blind and Society of the Deaf, and they had the production units, they had the dormitory, they had all the infrastructure within one place. So I tried to do ethnography, more kind of ethnography type of work there. And there was one venue where I did participatory video with people with physical impairments. So this is how I did my research. So we conducted, as I said, 52 semi-structured interviews together with disabled co-researchers. So usually I was accompanied by a co-researcher from the NGO. And then the second phase was in 2019, from 1st May to 8th of September. And this was mainly the cooperative inquiry with participatory video. I will explain what participatory video is in a moment. And participatory video was used mainly with 8 adults with physical impairments. And then we had the reflection phase, which is the final phase in summer 2020. So participatory video is actually not about making films or video. It's a facilitation tool where it's a medium of interaction and discussion where video is used to know each other better. So it's not about making films. It's using video to spur like discussions within these marginalized communities. It has been used widely with disabled people, mainly in European context, in the UK, but it has never, I think it has never been used with disabled people in Uzbekistan. So it was to the extent of my knowledge. So in this, we had iterative workshops, like I think more than 30 meetings over 4 months, and with the same group of people, 8 adults with physical impairments, as you see from the photo. By using the video, they tried to learn how to use the camcorder. Apologies, I didn't mention the founders of this project. So this was funded by the Wenner-Gren Foundation grant and this Open Society Foundation's grant, the fieldwork. And one of the outcomes of this video, so I didn't have any preset questions. So they learned how to use the video, the camcorder, and how to record themselves, how to introduce themselves into the video. And then there are after several exercises, there is a final kind of exercise, which is called shot-by-shot documentary, where they come up with their own scenarios and they record their own film. It can be a drama film or a documentary or anything. And one of our participants, who is now late, she died recently, Mukambar. She recorded a movie called Mukambar's Dream. And this is the script. So she came up with this scenario of how she claimed independence from her own brothers. And because she lived in a very extended household, within a very small house with several families, and then she wanted to live independently. And she claimed this independence from the Mahalla committee, asking for social housing from the government. And then during that days, the government introduced a new program on social housing for disabled people, which lasted not long. It lasted only like a couple of years. But the Mahalla committee was the main barrier for her to live independently. They said, like, the Mahalla members, the chairperson was saying that, why do you need to live independently when you have brothers to look after yourself? Will you be able to live independently? So rather than looking at a person from a human rights kind of perspective, they were looking at her more of like a so they were limiting themselves to only allocating charity benefits, not like allowing her to fulfill her dream to live independently. And through that video, through the documentary, so all the roles were played by disabled people themselves. So one person played the Mahala chairperson, Mahala workers, and they were like reviving that scenario, like making it live and then playing it themselves. So through that exercise, they tried to understand what were the barriers within the community, which were not allowing them to live independently. And this was very rich in discussion. So I didn't do anything. They were like trying to come up with the scenario themselves, and I'm trying to facilitate with a minimum involvement. And sometimes I was also a personal assistant, like trying to, because of the inaccessibility of the Tashkent, we tried to go into different locations to film the video. And we came up with this video, which I didn't edit yet, but I'm trying to analyze all the data still. And many ethical and positionality dilemmas emerged during this research. I came as a non-disabled male researcher, and I felt that there were many power relationships when I was also doing interviews with my colleagues from the NGO, also doing this participatory video exercise. And after I started writing about the injustices happening within the Mahala community and the Mahala becoming a barrier, there was a danger that I'm becoming kind of a voice of the disabled. So I'm trying to convey their message through my own writing in the local media. But throughout these exercises, in the initial phases, I felt that there was not much trust in me as a researcher coming from the UK and doing PhD at the University of Sussex. But slowly through these exercises, we started like making jokes, and they were also making jokes on me. And then I felt that these kind of, I call them like crib jokes with my co-researchers as an indicator of me becoming more closer to my research participant and colleagues. At the same time, I was trying to change my hats as a researcher, as an NGO colleague, as a media activist, as a civil society activist. So this was very challenging to do at the same time. So what happened after that videos? I thought to share several kind of what was the significance for participants. They learned how to use video in their own daily work at the NGO, and before they never used video in their works. And after I left the field, I'm still working with them, but when I left to write up my dissertation, they started their own projects. So one project called Using Video for Empowerment of Disabled People, and they used the same tools. I left the cameras to get with them. So they were left with all the skills and the cameras, and they started using this to implement new projects. And these videos were shot for advocacy purposes, and they articulated the injustices they were facing in their daily lives. And they understood that a video can have a kind of a very safe communicative space where they can share their own problems, the barriers they're facing, and then this can lead to solidarity within that group. As I said, there was also significance for policy, and some of these videos were shown to the policymakers. Not the videos that I did during my thesis, but the project videos that they did afterwards. And they tried to advocate for the policy changes, for example, the social housing. Then we before the dissertation, we didn't ratify the UNCRPD, and then in 2021, I think it also helped to ratify the convention because video was a powerful tool to convey the message by the disability community. Also, I felt there's a significance for academia because we rarely use participatory research with disabled communities in Uzbekistan. In mostly research is very kind of traditional, hierarchical. We also had I tried to include a blind professor from the National University of Uzbekistan into our group, but power dynamics kind of emerged within that because he was a professor, but the NGO colleagues were not professors. Even those who didn't complete the secondary school. So he was asking me why you're doing this with these unprofessional people. So there's still risks of like undermining the lived experience of disabled communities and disabled people's organizations because their knowledge is considered to be not valid for academic kind of peer-reviewed research done within university walls. And I think there's a huge methodological contribution in there because video can be a powerful tool, not for academic research, but also for advocacy. Thank you very much. This was my presentation. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Dilmurat. Also, thank you, both you and Magdalena. You are both staying on time. This is, two consecutive speakers staying on time. I don't remember happening often in webinars, so really appreciate it. A very interesting research, and I like the last slide when you divided the significance for the different, stakeholders like the disabled people, the academia, and how this, and also the challenges you mentioned, for being non-disabled and doing research on disability. And I mean, we have quite a few researchers in the call today. Quite a lot of them are non-disabled, and it's interesting to see how the movement approach, how we welcome disabled and non-disabled people, and how we treat them, and whether this is, I don't know, against social model or in line, and all this discussion. So yeah, I think your example was very good. There is a question in the chat. Let me read it. Sophia. She says, can you develop more on what were the town of the deaf and town of the blind you mentioned earlier on the research?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm asked a lot about these towns of the deaf and towns of the blind, which sounds very unique. I think there are many similar spaces in post-Soviet areas, like in Russia. There are towns mainly populated by blind and visually impaired people. This resulted mainly due to the Soviet disability policies, where they put infrastructure and they segregated blind and deaf communities into specific areas where all the infrastructure was prepared for them. So these are institutions like specialized production units. We call them UPP, Учебно-производственные предприятия, in Russian, where they worked, and also the dormitories where they lived, also even kindergartens for their kids, the cultural center. And this was similar, like in the towns of the blind, towns of the deaf. And now if you go there in Tashkent, there are still majority population are like disabled there. So I didn't use participatory video with them there, and I tried to navigate these kind of logistical complexities with traveling from one location to another, because they were distant, and then I tried to use like different methodologies with different people. Obviously, it will be problematic to use video with blind and visually impaired communities, but I tried to include one person in the group with physical impairments, but still, and also deaf people, and also time constraints. It was very, very difficult to do it with 8 adults with physical impairments. But I write a lot about these towns in my dissertation. I can share the link so you can read more in one of the empirical chapters about these towns. I try to unpack them in detail. Thank you.
Thank you for explaining. This reminds me there was quite a bit of noise a few weeks ago when for the European Independent Living Day, one of the European members of the European Parliament, a Greek one, posted that he requested the European commissioners to give funding to create disability villages in Europe, because this is something that families are asking for. And of course, I mean, we reacted, and a lot of other people reacted, and we said that this is pure institutionalization and segregation of people and creating ghettos. And I think this post we made back then did by far, I mean, for the last year or even more, with most engagement with our followers and members, which shows that how much our movement and our people think this is not a good idea to have, you know, special places and ghetto areas for disabled people, even if they are in theory for our protection or whatever, and if they are super accessible, or still, you know, they are not the solution. There is a question from Minia. A question for both speakers, so also to Magda. Were your co-researchers in paid employment for the whole duration of the research process?
Can
So
I
we'll
answer?
start with Magda, yeah?
Yes, of course. That's we were paid equally for the whole in the whole research process. Yeah.
Cool. Yes.
Sorry, for my case, unfortunately, due to the budget limitations, there was a honorarium for participants and co-researchers, and also transportation was covered. But I couldn't pay my co-researchers. But I tried to give back, trying to get funding for the future projects from the international donors so that they can proceed. And also all the equipment was donated to the NGO after the end of the project. Thank you. It's a really important question.
Yes, thank you also for answering. I mean, to my understanding, at least, this is also equally good solution, since you, as you said, you gave back in different ways, and still there was the honorarium and the other things. So it was a way kind of to still compensate. But yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments or something? I would say we still have, I don't know, let's say 1 minute before we go to the break for 10 minutes. So if there is any, Theo.
Just to say that I really enjoyed both presentations, and the reflexivity that has gone into both projects is amazing, and this is very important when you try to do co-production, to be reflexive, because there are so many hierarchies still there, and reflexivity helps to expose these hierarchies and work with them and try to counter them in some ways. But it's also amazing how many hierarchies are still there, and this shows that the legal and policy statements and guidelines, there is so much work to make them filter into practice. It's a whole mountain to climb. Still there, we are just at the beginning of it. But yeah, but reflexivity is key.
Thank you, Theo, for sharing. And I mean, you are totally right. I see one more question for Dilmurat in the chat, so I guess we can also address that quickly. So Madina says, thanks, colleagues, for sharing your important work across the regions. My question is for Dilmurat. Are you aware of any other local NGOs or OPDs that have used the participatory video method in areas beyond independent living? Thank you.
This is a very good question. Thank you very much, Madina. Unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, as I said, I don't know any NGO who would use that. Maybe they're not framing it as a participatory video, but they're using video as a medium for advocacy and other purposes. I know about participatory video being implemented in sustainability and environmental activism in the region, but not with disabled people in their communities. But it would be great to use this tool because I mean I'm trying to continue this work not only in Uzbekistan but also in the region in general. Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting question.
Thank you, Dilmurat. There is also one comment from Evangelia in the chat, just saying probably to what I commented, that a good evolution was that the Greek representative claimed publicly that he does not agree with the idea of villages for disabled people, although it was a position of the political party he belongs to. Discussions are to be continued, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing process, of course, and people claim various stuff. Yeah, you want to say something? Or do you raise? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that discussion. It's I'm still discussing that with colleagues, whether these, as you said, Camille, ghettos are good or bad for disabled people. But I found it on the one hand, I mean, when you look through the prism of like Article 19 and the CRPD, and then the whole this power of inclusion discourse, which is also made by the international organizations, inclusion. It may seem as segregation, but when you ask blind and visually impaired people, they said, or like deaf people, they said they found the community within these so-called ghettos. So they found the community and they're still sticking together, and so they're having this kind of collective agency. The same happened, for example, in a crib camp in the US. You can also call this as a segregation, like as a segregated camp only for people with disabilities, but there still were personal assistants who were non-disabled there. But still, I would argue that it's not like everything like black and white. It's like disabled ghettos and like villages. There can be plus, but also there can be on the negative sides of that. I think. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's a big discussion, which if we open today, we will finish tomorrow. So I think we should have another time to discuss it. I think one important parameter that we should take into account in these cases is whether these communities, or whatever you want to call it, are created by, it is an initiative of disabled people themselves. Like the crib camp, I think it was disabled people who decided they want to have this gathering and to meet with themselves. And whether it is something imposed by non-disabled people, like families or someone else, or by the government, or it is the only solution because otherwise you die, or whatever. In that case, so it's very different. If I want to live with 10 other people and with an elephant, and if this is legal, then I should be able to do it. If I don't want, I should also have a choice to not do it. But okay, that's a discussion for another. There is a comment from Deborah very quickly. Thanks to Dilmurat and Magda for sharing your research observation with us. Looking forward to learning more from you, perhaps also at the NMDR 2027. Hopefully we will all meet at this. Is it in Trondheim, no? In Norway. The next year, personally, I'm looking forward. So, yes, that would be very nice. I suggest now we do a small break. And we are back at 11:25. Is that okay? So we have still enough time for Rado's presentation and a small closing by Theodor.
11, 11:25 Central European time, right?
25.
Yes, but Central European time.
Yeah. Sorry. You are
So,
right.
for example, in UK, it's 10:15 now.
Yeah. And in Japan, it's 7 or something. So,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Cheers.
Cool. See you in 10 minutes. Hello, everyone. I think we can come back to our last but equally interesting part of the webinar. With us will be Rados Keravica, a very known person for Enil. He was in our youth board, in our senior board, and a lot of other things. And Rados will talk to us about his research with disabled people in qualitative health research area. And Rados, I will give the floor to you so you can introduce yourself properly and take the floor and share everything you have for us. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Camilo, for a warm welcome. I hope that you can all hear me well and that my microphone is working all right.
It's perfect.
I'll share my presentation. Just give me a second. Yeah, as Camille said, I've been quite involved with Enil for a very long time, since 2014, and I served in 2 mandates as a board member. And then at some point, the opportunity arose to get in academia and to do a PhD, which I did in University of Leeds at the Center for Disability Studies in the UK. This is where I'm now based in the UK. I transitioned after my PhD to work in Bradford Institute for Health Research. This is the institute which is attached to a university hospital, and Bradford is in North England, and it's an interesting place because it's full of diversity. There is a big migrant community, predominantly Muslim community, a lot of poverty as a result of deindustrialization and post-industrial time that left many people without their previous jobs where they worked in a big mills in textile industry. And the role of our institute is to explore social determinants of health and how things like ethnicity, poverty, and other characteristics influence health inequalities. And I will be talking about one of the projects that I've been working on within Bradford Institute for Health Research, and also my PhD project that I did in Leeds and Center for Disability Studies. I'll talk about a little bit at the beginning what is research co-production and different traditions and the terminology affiliated with it, because in health research, in NHS, in National Health Service in England, there would be terms like co-creation, patient-public involvement and engagement, and it would be really rare and awkward that some funding for health research is afforded without PPIE element. Now, all funders in health research in UK, and I think even more broadly, they insist that you explain how you're going to do PPIE, patient and public involvement and engagement. And I think it's very similar to co-production, and I will touch upon that later in the presentation. So, as I said, I will present 2 case studies. One was my PhD, which was the research on disabled children's participation in healthcare decision making. Qualitative research project, actually socio-legal analysis, because my primary background was human rights law, and then I landed in sociology department to do my PhD in Leeds. So I did socio-legal studies that involved qualitative inquiry with disabled children and young people. parents and healthcare professionals in England and Serbia, my home country. So I'll be talking a little bit about how I involved young people as co-researchers in this project. And another case study is the research called Equity MS within Bradford Institute. It's a research on health inequalities of people with multiple sclerosis. And I will be talking about how we utilize lived experience of people with multiple sclerosis and how we involve them in driving the research agenda. Okay, and I think many of you might be familiar with this ladder of participation that is used across different disciplines. Hart, in his work with UNICEF, first proposed it in 1992, and there are various versions that you will find online on this ladder of participation, but mainly it's talking about how there are different forms of participation, and we are very much interested to enable such participation that wouldn't amount to tokenism, and this is the three lowest rungs of this ladder: tokenism, when participation serves merely the purposes of decoration or even manipulation of participants. But then when it comes to upper levels of participation, there are such forms of participation where actually,
Radosh, sorry to interrupt you, but you had slides prepared. Are you going to use them or just?
Yeah, actually, I thought I shared it, but maybe I didn't.
No, sorry, we don't
I
see something.
apologize. That's a good shout, and I'm
Really
sorry that I
sorry to
didn't say
interrupt,
it at the
but,
very beginning.
I also see that other people can't see the slides either. So
Yeah. So let's try to read it. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, now we see it.
Okay.
thank you.
Not in full screen.
Sorry about that, and thanks so much for drawing my attention. Just let me
Right.
make it big. Okay.
It's still
Can you see the slides now?
we see
Yes,
the ones
it-
saying research
Yeah,
co-production with people.
it's not on slideshow, but it's workable like this.
So do you see the ladder of participation in this slide that I'm showing now?
No.
No. Okay.
It's a title slide that shows.
Okay, that's strange. Let's see.
Maybe you need to stop sharing and share again.
Maybe. Because on my
Otherwise, I can
screen,
share.
I'm sharing it. All right.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. Now we see the ladder.
You see the ladder now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not
And
sure we will see the movement, but
now I turn the slide, and do you see the slide titled Defining Co-Production?
no.
Okay. So
Let
maybe I'll have to ask you for technical support, because you also have the presentation, so you can share it from your end. I don't know if that works.
Yeah, I can try to share my screen. You need to stop sharing yours.
Okay.
And you will just tell me and I will change the slides. Hopefully I will manage to do it. Let's see. Let me know if you see and everything.
I see the ladder, and this is the slide that
Yeah, but
was lastly
let
talking
me
about.
put it. Oh, wait, something happened, but I will do it again. Okay, and then I will put the slideshow, and hopefully it will work. You see it in full screen?
No, we don't see the full screen.
Do you see it
We see
changing?
PowerPoint, but maybe.
Yeah, I think you first need to start the slideshow and then share the slideshow.
Okay. Let's see. So stop sharing. And then
Sorry about that, but while Camille is doing it, maybe I can keep talking the points I had in mind. basically the reason why I show the letter of participation is to make a point that not all forms of participation amount to co-production, and that usually in the research process, if we try to do co-production properly, and I don't like the word properly because there is no one way to do co-production, we strive for the upper forms of participation on this ladder, meaning that there is substantial influence of our co-researchers on the research process, on the research questions, not merely as subjects of participating in the research methods, providing the insights in their lived experience, but also somebody, as I said, who is driving research agenda. And there will be many associated terms across different disciplines. So if you look through the literature, you will be reading about co-production or co-creation, co-design in participatory action research, in studies that use, as they call it, citizen science, because they try to equip ordinary citizens, in this case, disabled people, to conduct the research and contribute to it. Okay, Camille, you can switch the slide. Okay, I included here some quotes and definitions in the end of the presentation, which we will share, which Camille will probably share after this. There would be a reading list at the end, so I provided some useful references, and I think we in health research in the UK are guided by National Institute for Health Research, who is the main funder of health research in the UK, and they say, for example, that co-production is when researchers, practitioners, and members of the public, including disabled people, work together, sharing power and responsibility from the start to the end of the project, including the generation of knowledge. So there's very much now institutional recognition of the value of lived experience and the imperative to include your target group, and in this case, disabled people, but it very much relates to any target group that your research project wants to work with. Okay, Camille, you can switch the slide. Okay, and there is also a human rights claim and human rights reasoning when it comes to co-production, because CRPD in their general principle explains that participation is one of the guiding principles of the UN CRPD, and also in Article 31 on statistics and data, there is a need to include disabled people in all data collection efforts, and the purpose of the research is to provide evidence and to collect the data. And by involving disabled people in the research, we produce the evidence-based research that shapes policy and services. And this is the reason and the rationale why involving disabled people. Okay, Camille, you can turn the slide. Okay, so this is the first study that I wanted to talk to you about. This was from my PhD, and as I said, I was interested to understand to what extent disabled children are involved in decisions about medical treatments done to them. And I looked at elective orthopedic surgeries, knowing that many children with different forms of impairment will be experiencing some forms of medical treatment in their childhood that try to stabilize or minimize their impairment, and these are usually life altering decisions and very much complex decisions that involve different trade-offs, because we know that most of the impairments cannot be eradicated and cured completely. So I wanted to talk directly to disabled children and young people who experienced different forms of orthopedic treatments in England and in Serbia. So I did a comparative analysis. I investigated the legal environment, the legal and policy environment, how it shapes children's participation, and what are the legal requirements from healthcare professionals of including disabled children in these complex conversations. And I also wanted to hear from parents what are their parenting practices and their attitudes about to what extent they involve their children. So I recruited 8 families from Serbia, 8 families from England, and I aim to talk with healthcare professionals, orthopedic surgeons, and nurses working in orthopedic wards in England and Serbia. But in Serbia, it was difficult to reach them, and they very much felt that I'm intruder wanting to scrutinize the quality of their work, so they shunned from participating in the research, while the healthcare professionals in England willingly and happily accepted to participate and share their professional practices, which tells a lot about gatekeeping and the professional authority in Eastern Europe and in our region. The qualitative inquiry was based in semi-structured online interviews, but I wanted to talk to you more about co-production side of the research, and Camille, you can turn the slide. So for these purposes, first, when I was shaping the research question, I wanted to draw on lived experience of disabled young people, and for these purposes, I decided to establish something that I called Youth Research Advisory Board, and I worked with ENIL Youth. ENIL has a subgroup has a very wide youth network of young disabled people that I contacted and shared the invitation for young people to sign up to work with me to inform the research agenda. So I managed to recruit 12 young people internationally from different parts of Europe who wanted to discuss with me how to shape the research questions, how to shape the interview guides that I will use later in the research process, and I also engaged them in the data analysis process. So it was a COVID time. So I did my research. I started in 2019, and very soon after, in spring of 2020, pandemic started. So I needed to move whole field work online, basically, and that meant that I did this co-production work solely through online setting, through Zoom workshops. I had 3 online Zoom workshops with this group of young people. There was also a group of young people with learning disabilities, with intellectual impairments from Bulgaria who didn't speak English. The reason why I involved them is because the collaborating partner in the project was Lumos Foundation, who had self-advocacy group of young people from Bulgaria, and they wanted to be involved in the research and learn about how research is done. So because of language barrier, we did consultations with them separately. Also through similar means, 3 Zoom workshops with the translator, and the method was such that their self-advocacy support worker warned me that discussions about lived experience of health can be very traumatizing and sensitive for this group of young people, because some of them lost their family members during pandemic. They had bad experiences with healthcare professionals. So we tried to work around the scenarios, what they thought, how a young disabled person who is supposed to have some sort of surgery or medical treatment, what is their expectation, fears and hopes, etc. But I was warned by their support worker on the basis of their presumptions what would be sensitive and traumatizing for them. But it turned out that during those conversations, lived experience nevertheless came to surface, and it didn't really turn out to be such risk, because they willingly talked about their lived experiences. So one form of involvement was shaping the research question. What is important in the clinical encounter? We were also developing interview guides that I will be using later on in my interviews with parents, children, and healthcare professionals. We were designing together information sheets, participant-facing materials to make it accessible and understandable for children. And then in the 3rd phase, after I completed data collection, Camille, you can turn the slide here. In the 3rd phase, after the interviews were completed, you can also turn once again, because it will show the arrows once again and 2 more times. I'm just showing the parts of the research where I involved young people in co-production. So design the research methodology and the question data collection as the interview participants. When it comes to data analysis, I transcribed all the interviews word to word, anonymized them, and then I shared anonymized extracts from those interviews with my co-production group to discuss together what is the meaning of this content, what are the kinds of stories that they're recognizing, what is their ideas about the codes that I will be using in my subsequent analysis. So I tried to involve them in as many stages of the research process as possible. Then finally, when it comes to reporting and the dissemination of finding, I had one young person who designed a training for healthcare professionals inspired by our joint work, and she delivered this training in her home country. Similarly, one parent that was participating in the research developed a similar training for healthcare professionals in her home country, in Serbia in this case. Okay, Camille, you can turn the slide and I'll try to speed up when I discuss the case study too. So as I said, this is another project based in Bradford in UK. And in this project, we already had an insight that there are reasons why some groups of people with multiple sclerosis are not accessing in a same and timely manner for diagnosis and later treatment. The treatment for multiple sclerosis, as many of you know, consists of disease-modifying treatments. These are the medications that are aimed to slow down the progression of multiple sclerosis because it's a progressive condition that ultimately result in various forms of impairment effects and disability, not only physical, but in some cases cognitive. So the idea is to stall the progression as soon as possible and as efficiently as possible through highly efficient DMTs, disease-modifying treatments. And the research, already existing research, is saying that there are inequalities in UK, and the people from deprived communities, people of different ethnicities, are experiencing delays in getting diagnosed and experiencing delays in getting onto treatments. So through qualitative research, we want to understand the reasons why is this happening. And we are talking with people with MS from Leeds and Bradford and with healthcare professionals to understand how healthcare system creates the barriers for certain groups of people. Camille, you can turn the slide. And for this purpose, we set up a patient and public involvement and engagement, PPIE, as we call it in the UK, but I will refer to this as a co-production group. 14 people with MS, with lived experience of MS from different parts of the UK, from 5 MS centers, that we are meeting on a regular basis to discuss the research questions, and generally to utilize their lived experience. Camille, you can turn the slide. So there is a standardized rate. I know it was raised in some of the previous presentations that there was a question whether we pay our co-researchers and the people participating in PPIE work. There is a standardized rate and the policy of National Institute for Health Research in the UK, and the rate is £27.5 per hour. So sometimes we approach to them and explain, well, we have particular task. We would like to pilot the interview guide with you and to discuss the questions that we would like to utilize in the interviews. We predicted that this would be 2 or 3 hours of work. Are you interested? And then they can also choose and opt to participate in particular tasks apart from our regular group-based meetings. Okay. Camille, you can turn the slides. So this is, for example, some ideas that came from these PPIE consultations. So, for example, people with MS who participate in this co-production group, they told us that they often feel their need to be their own advocates because healthcare professionals are not listening to them properly. When their symptoms don't match the handbook, they're often ignored. When young people present to their GP or even to their neurologist they're not easily diagnosed because there are assumptions that people of such young age, it's too early for them to get MS. There is a socioeconomic disadvantage. People have difficulties admitting to themselves that they have this illness once they're diagnosed. There is a denial and the lack of emotional support because they have certain ideas what it will mean for them to live with a disability and to be disabled in further down the line if the disease is progressing. And there is interesting point that I will get back to when Dilmurad discussed disabled villages and ghettos. And there is, I wouldn't say hot debate, but there is debate about how useful MS support groups are as peer support, where people are with similar impairment are gathered to provide support and information to each other. There are quite some people with MS saying that they don't want to be part of these groups and that they find them they want to be alienated for them, and there are different reasons. Sometimes they feel that they're reminded about this negative part of their identity, about ultimately being disabled, and they want to distance themselves from disabled identity. So that's an interesting point, because people who are early in disease, they still haven't developed significant impairment. They don't yet feel part of disabled group and want to refute this disabled identity. And we can discuss the negative implications of this. But there are quite useful and practical points coming from this PPI work. For example, how health system operates, how it creates the barriers. For example, the disease needs to be monitored on a regular basis so that the disease activity can be identified, usually through scans, through MRIs, for neurologists to decide whether the person needs to be escalated to a different treatment, different medication, maybe more highly efficient. But then, because of the underfunded healthcare system, it's very hard to get the scans. So people said that sometimes they need to sign up for the drug trials in order to get access to regular scans. And this is all informing the questions that we will be exploring during the field work. And Camille, you can turn the slide. You can turn the slide with the concluding remarks. Yeah. So why was the co-production important? Well, first, something that we all reiterated: the disabled people are experts in their own lives, and only by listening to their lived experience we can figure out what are useful research questions to explore. There are also ethical reasons that we need to partner with disabled people, and that they should be driving research agenda and sharing the power with researchers. And as I said, very practical reasons, because it proves relevance of the research questions that we are asking and researching. Sometimes it helps with the recruitment, accessibility, and acceptability of participant-facing materials. So, for example, we get their input, how research invitation looks like, whether it's cumbersome to read, whether they have advice on the language and how we present the research, whether it's understandable, and etc. And finally, it enhances impact in dissemination, because usually we work with charities, with groups of disabled people, MS charities in this case, to disseminate the research findings, organize roundtables and conferences together. I think I was the only one in the group who didn't stick to the time perfectly like two others, but I hope Tia and Camille, that there will be some time left for your concluding remarks and for the questions.
Thank you, Leandros. Thank you. I think it was very interesting, and you were the last one anyway, so it's totally fine. Yeah, thank you for sharing both the experiences and both researchers. I think there is a lot of things we could comment, but because of the time, I don't want to take the floor, but rather give it to people if there is questions. If there are questions, there is one from Alison. From the name, I guess you are from UK, so that might be even more connected. Yeah, Alison.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, my camera isn't great, so it's buffering, so I'll turn that off if that's okay. It's something that occurred to me when Rados was talking, but it would apply equally to the other presenters, and it has to do with the issue of what all the presenters have been talking about, and the co-production has been just so interesting, and how the researchers have been working alongside disabled people. And my question is, how do we keep control of research outputs when it comes to policy making? Because what I've tended to see is we can do a lot of research and we can come up with messages and points which are co-produced, and then policymakers can kind of get hold of it, and civil servants, and at that point it's much harder to influence the process, and messages get altered, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. And I wondered if Rados, or indeed any of the speakers, had any comments on that.
Yeah, I'll give a brief comment and some thoughts that are instantly springing to my mind. And it's not related maybe to these projects that I was talking about, but you're right, there is sometimes a tendency for policymakers to twist the messages. So also, for example, I'll give you just one example from Bradford, because as I said, there is a big migrant population, big Pakistani Muslim population, and there was some research, health research coming and identifying big prevalence in the city, higher prevalence of disabled children being born in Bradford compared to other cities. And they found that one of the reasons is cultural related to consanguinity, consanguineous marriage between cousins and relatives. And then when this research was published, like, it provoked outcry, and right-wing parties and voices abused it to for the purposes that are racist, obviously, and invoking the hatred and discussion about particular communities. And the research findings were augmented in a way that, yes, there was some indication, but it wasn't solely, and it wasn't a dominant factor and the only factor that drives such high prevalence. There were other factors um, like poverty, deprivation, and other risks in pregnancy that mothers are experiencing. But yeah, there is very much the need for researchers to be involved in dissemination and clarifying actually what are the messages of the research and findings, because there is a risk that they will be twisted to serve the purposes of the agenda that doesn't really align with our agenda as researchers, and doesn't even align with the findings themselves.
Thank you.
Yes, Dilmurat.
So I just wanted to add on that a very important question by Alison. I think, yeah, we need to, in my research, I came with my own agenda to the field. I wanted to explore something different. I was looking into the community-based rehabilitation, the CBR model, and how it will work with mahallas in Uzbekistan. But it turned out that the disabled communities are working with, they said, what is that? We are not interested in that. We need housing. And then second, every participant, almost like I was doing it with adults, and they were saying, will you be able to find jobs for me? And I understood that the two pressing issues is social housing, independent living, and employment. So this was the most pressing issues, but there are loads of things that we can do in terms of disability research, but I would say that it would be better to give the opportunity for disabled communities to come up with their own priorities, because we are not I'm not living together with them, but they should know what's more important for them. And also in a setting where there are limited resources, like in a low and middle income countries like Uzbekistan, where we have huge poverty levels, etc., and under-resourced countries. So it's becoming very important to focus on one thing that is very important for disabled people. Yeah, just my reflections out of my mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Thank you, dear Murat, for sharing also your reflections. Very to the point, I can say. And let me see if there's any other questions in the chat, if I miss anything. I see there was a discussion about the number of participation, which is very good and brought even more to the, to the understanding of it. I don't see anyone else is. Murat, yes, again.
Sorry, about the ladder of participation. I recently read the Disability Debrief by Peter Torres Fremlin?
Yes, we had it in
yeah.
one of our webinars.
Well, he is great. I mean, there was a recent piece by
Alberto Vasquez.
Alberto, yeah, and I think in some cases, many even international organizations, they tend to stick with the specific like DPOs, OPDs, and these are usually, I would say, these are always usual suspects. And in terms of representation, I think we also need to talk about representation. How representative are these DPOs? Because sometimes, as Theodor was rightly saying, that we need to unmask this tokenistic participation. And in many cases, they frame it as a participatory research. They invite usual suspects, usually male with physical impairments, and then they coin it as a participatory cooperative inquiry or something. So I think we need to unpack this a lot more. And also the Alberto's piece on the house we built, what is OPD and how is it representative? Also very important, I think. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Indeed, Alberto wrote very nice. I think it was 2 articles or 3 articles at the Disability Debrief. And together with Akriti, and I don't know if there is other people as well, they have this mad thinking initiative when they do some very interesting online gatherings where they discuss difficult and interesting topics. Like now they have about abolitioning and all this kind of stuff. So yeah. Thank you for sharing also the piece on the chat. Yes, thank you. So definitely, whoever is interested, go and I recommend to read it. I mean, it brings a lot of food for thought also on how we work and about our relationship with other people, and if what we do is always correct, or what we could improve, and all these kind of things. So that's very interesting. We are in theory over time. That's why you hear me a bit like, thinking and trying to be fast. I mean, we don't have any like super strong reason to stop the call, apart of the promise that we would finish at 12. So I mean, we don't have like interpreters or something. So if there is any burning question or comment, you can still ask and bring it. Otherwise, I will give the floor to Theo to close with his own way. I don't see people. Yeah, probably it's food time in some countries. So Theo, give us the pass for the lunch.
I would like to thank the speakers and all the people from the audience and for the brilliant presentations and for the brilliant questions and comments. I think I think that there are some good ideas. I hope there will be some ideas for future collaborations out of this. I saw in the audience a lot of strong independent living researchers and activists. So I hope we'll be able to also facilitate future projects in this way. The only thing I want to say as a concluding remark is that I think it's important to include people with experiential knowledge, with experiential expertise, not only as experts on their own lives, but also as experts on services, as experts on service models, as experts on policies, as experts on policy vocabularies, on policy grammars. And this is for me the next ladder in the citizen participation. This form of involvement that's not only about tell me how you feel and tell me what you experience, but tell me what you think about this policy. Tell me what you think about this service. Tell me how this service can be organized better. Tell me how to design a different service that's better for people. And this task is still in front of us as researchers, and also as people who are able to influence policy. As Alison also said, a lot of good research that we produce and co-produce then gets twisted and misinterpreted by the policy makers. So it's not the end of the line. Thank you again. I really enjoyed, and I feel profoundly grateful for all this energy and all these ideas that we were able to witness today. Have a good rest of the day for those who are still in the middle of it, and I hope that I'll see some of you next year at the NNDR conference.
And also just to interrupt very quickly, sorry for that. And also we can maybe see you sooner, because we will have a Independent Living Research Network workshop at the Freedom Drive in Brussels in September. It will be, Theodor, you can say more, it will be about independent living research and activism, no?
Yeah. For those who will be coming to the Freedom Drive, which is a big advocacy event organized by every other year, we'll have a workshop on disability activism in the Freedom Drive. So you are very welcome to come and listen. We'll have Neil Griffiths from Leeds presenting, and Gabor Petri as well, and Jamie Bolling will be chairing. So we have gathered together a good bunch of people.
And Theo.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I forgot to thank you, Camille, for the chairing. I mean, you're a perfect chair. Yeah.